You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and welcome to another movie review, and I mean a real one this time, not like yesterday. Sorry about that. I was actually gonna do this one yesterday, but then I was like, you know what? I have a tradition I gotta keep up. I gotta do the full video. For real today, we will be reviewing the 1971 movie, The Zodiac Killer, and shout out to Chisu for recommending this movie to me, because I would not have known about it unless he had mentioned it in the comments. So The Zodiac Killer is a movie about the Zodiac Killer.
Yes, I know, shocking.
But the interesting thing about it is it's very heavily fictionalized. Not only do they give the Zodiac Killer a motive, but they also give him an identity. They up the body count. They changed several of the kills and made a bunch of kills that were not even the way he killed people. In fact, some of his stuff kind of reminded me more of something Ted Bundy would have done, like he gets people who are stopped on the side of the road and, like, have their car broken down and tricks them. Like, he doesn't do any of the horrible shit Ted Bundy did to his victims, but it's still really weird. The movie itself was actually made in the height of the Zodiac Killer's killings, so they were still going on as the time the movie was being made, which, as you can imagine, probably led to some controversy at the time, and does kind of make it a little bit in bad taste. I will say this, though. This is a fucking fun movie. I don't know if you'd call it a slasher, I guess it kind of is, but it's very fun. It has a look at a true crime, similar to the way that The Town That Dreaded Sundown did, but this I felt was a lot more fun just because the characters were much more developed, the characters were very likable, and just a lot of the shit going on screen was entertaining. That's all I can really say without spoiling the plot, because about a third of the way through the movie they reveal who the Zodiac Killer is, and that's kind of a twist. So I don't know if I necessarily want to give that away right now. I might later in the video, we'll see. But I will say this. The behind the scenes of this movie is just as interesting as the movie itself. The guy who made this movie did it as part of an elaborate plot to try and catch the Zodiac Killer, because he figured someone as narcissistic as the Zodiac Killer couldn't resist coming into the theater to see a movie about himself. Now, how exactly they intended to catch someone who nobody knew who he was, I have no fucking idea. Maybe they figured he'd start bragging about it, or he'd start calling out the inconsistencies, or get mad that they were giving credit of his work to some fictional character. Maybe something like that. But they actually had rent-a-cops hiding in fucking ice cream machines in the snack bars in theaters. Another thing is they claimed that this movie was to spread awareness of the Zodiac Killer at the time, which I don't doubt. But a lot of people have retroactively seen it as kind of a shameless cash grab of a crisis that was going on at the time, you know, all these people being killed. And I definitely could see an argument to be made by that. The director who made this movie is actually making a documentary about the behind-the-scenes of it, and I'll be checking that out too. But yeah, this movie is definitely something else. It's very interesting. Here's where things are going to get slightly spoilery, just because, again, it spoils the first act of the movie, so you have been warned. So, for the first act of the movie, there's two main characters. The two characters being the older guy by the name of Grover and his friend Jerry. Grover's kind of an asshole, and they lead you to believe for most of the first act that Grover is the Zodiac Killer. In fact, at the end of the first act, he says, "I am the Zodiac," and then gets shot down by the police. But then, it cuts to Jerry saying, "How dare he take credit for my work," or something along those lines. And Jerry is a super likable guy. I found it very interesting that they made the Zodiac Killer a very likable guy. But part of the message behind this film was they were trying to say that, you know, serial killers could lurk among us and blend in and be perfectly normal, likable people. And I think that's kind of the message he was trying to get out with this movie. But yeah, this is a very low-budget movie, and that definitely shows, but that just adds to the charm of it. It's a very fun crime movie. It's very slasher-y. I don't know if it constitutes as a slasher, but I'm gonna say it is. I'm gonna call it a slasher from now on. I do think it is a slasher. The body count in the movie is higher than the confirmed body count of the Zodiac Killer, although the true body count of the Zodiac Killer is obviously unknown. But the movie itself is very entertaining, and if you like true crime, I definitely recommend checking it out, but do watch it with a grain of salt, because it is very, very fictionalized. Much more so even than The Town That Dreaded Sundown. And I do think this was much more fun than The Town That Dreaded Sundown, so if you liked that movie, check this one out. Both are great movies, but I do think, in my opinion, this is the better one. And controversial opinion here, but I think I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed David Fincher's Zodiac. Don't get me wrong, I love David Fincher's Zodiac. That's a great movie. It's just a retelling of the investigation. I mean, it heavily implies that this guy, Arthur Lee Allen, was the Zodiac Killer, which was the opinion of the guy who wrote the book that movie was based on. But this one, you know, they give the Zodiac Killer a backstory, and his motivations are a little weird. Like, he's killing all these people because he's like, oh, I'm adding slaves to my next life. Like, basically, he says every person he kills will be his slave in the next life, so he's just collecting slaves. But yeah, it's a very fun 70s horror movie. Very cheesy and over the top, and it's a very fun watch. A little distasteful, probably, but, you know, I took it with a grain of salt as a fictionalized retelling and enjoyed it for what it was. But yeah, anyway, this has been Fugitive Red Eye, and have a good one.
What do you say to the nice man? Say thank you. I don't like him.